could be the most important video you will see in your lifetime because the Amazon is on fire. Deforestation is destroying our planet. We are facing twin threats here in California of drought and wildfires. There is a solution. There is a bill, the California Deforestation-free Procurement Act. We are so honored to have with us today Natural Resources Defense Council represented Jennifer Skene of the NRDC and Judie Mancuso of Social Compassion and Legislation, along with Nick Sackett, your attorney for Social Compassion and Legislation. Judie, spell it out for us. We are asking people to make calls to legislators, and the numbers are going to be on your screen throughout this broadcast. Why is this perhaps the most crucial phone call anyone can make?
Because it's all about supply and demand. And if we as California, which is the 5th largest economy in the world, says that we will only spend our dollars, which is called procurement, when you buy things for the state of California, that we want these companies to prove to us they are not causing deforestation in the Amazon and the boreal forest. So once a big state like us takes this step, then others will follow. And so these good actors who aren't causing this destruction get the business and create a bigger demand. And then the bad actors who are causing the deforestation lose the sales, and that will then shift where they get their supply from. Does that simplify it enough?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Jennifer Skene, Natural Resources Defense Council, a huge, incredible organization fighting for the environment, for wildlife. Why are you involved? Why are you urging people, and we're going to see some videos in a second, but why are you urging them to call now, immediately, and say yes on AB 416?
Well, thank you, Jane, for having me today. Yeah, this bill is a recognition that addressing the dual threats of climate change and biodiversity loss requires the protection of the forests that we still have. Forests are the strongest natural climate allies we have. You know, here in California, we often hear about solutions in Silicon Valley, but we have technology already that absorbs and stores carbon, and they're called trees. And forests, like the ones in the tropics, and also the boreal forest in the global north around Canada, Scandinavia, Alaska, Russia, are they're known as the lungs of the earth. They are 2 of our most stalwart climate allies that are absolutely critical to protect if we're going to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. And we're already getting a hint of what those impacts are now with the droughts and unprecedented heat that you mentioned. So it's more critical now than ever that climate leaders like California take measures to ensure that their purchases are not driving the loss of these climate critical forests.
So let's take a quick look at one of the videos that lays out the case for why this is the most important phone call you can make, and you have to make it now.
Pocas palabras le diré que la cosmovisión indígena establece que todo lo que nos rodea es un ser vivo, igual a igual. O sea, nosotros no somos superiores ni al agua, ni al árbol, ni al bosque. Tenemos una relación de igual a igual.
Ane iate kolobatnia ta atakeraleleu dengan lagekta.
Menurut aku hutan rambutku. Gunung adalah kepalaku itu. Air adalah darahku. Tuhan di tanah ini itulah manusia sama dengan aku menurut aku.
So Nick Sackett, California, one of the biggest economies in the world. what happens in California, as we often hear, spreads to the rest of the country and then the rest of the world. What is the reception in Sacramento, given that right now in this state, we are dealing with insufferable temperatures and drought, and the connection to climate change is becoming more and more obvious?
Yeah, it is to us. Unfortunately, we get the sense in Sacramento that some of the legislature as a whole is not really pushing legislation that is really going to take the action that we need to see. So that is why we're asking everyone to call to let our legislators know this is super important to all of us, and that they need to be pushing these kinds of bills forward and not dragging their feet and pushing it off to, another year, another bill. It needs to happen now. So it's important to let our legislators know that this is important, because to be honest, right now in Sacramento, they're not doing what they need to be doing.
Well, I mean, we're seeing this globally. We're hearing scientists and others on the forefront of change like Greta Thunberg say, hey, you're talking about climate change mitigation, you have meetings about it, you discuss it, but clearly the major nations of the world are not doing what needs to be done. Climate change is accelerating, Jennifer. There are feedback loops, which means that it becomes exponentially worse, and there's also something called the point of no return. I can't think of anything more crucial than this bill right now, and all we need to do is make a couple of phone calls. We are providing the numbers. I will put it right there. Those are the two gentlemen, Bill Dodd and Vice Chair and Jim Nielsen, and one's a Democrat, one's a Republican. This is a bipartisan issue. People simply need to call Bill Dodd. There is the number, and it's also in the intro to this video, and Jim Nielsen. There is the number, and say what?
Well, they need to say that this is an issue that can't wait, that we need to ensure that California is not driving the impacts to these forests that are going to mean that we can't meet our global climate targets. As scientists have said, we have now less than 10 years left to avoid really unthinkable climate catastrophe. And these forests and this bill in particular are absolutely critical measures to avoiding those really catastrophic outcomes. And so we need to let them know that, our economies, our lives, our future generations are really dependent on ensuring that we're not driving the loss of these forests for products like, toilet paper, for unsustainable food supply chain, for palm oil. We can no longer afford to be driving this loss for something as unnecessary as the supply chains that we currently have.
Yeah, and so tell me how it would work. Let's pray that this actually happens and that this is a bill that gets passed. What changes would we see, Judie Mancuso, of social compassion and legislation?
Well, what would happen is the Department of General Services at the California state government, when they enter into an agreement for over $2,500 for goods or services, it could be rubber, it could be paper, palm oil, as Jennifer noted, beef. When they enter into these agreements, the company that they are buying from needs to provide a policy that they have in place that specifies their forest practices. And these policies are already available on a lot of big corporations' websites. This is not something new. It's something that needs to grow and get bigger. But these corporations, like I said before, the good actors, do have these policies in place, and that they use resources from forests that is not, brand new, going into causing to cut down every tree, that it comes from a sustainable place.
Even if it came from, let's say, China?
Well, go ahead, Nick.
Sure. The essence of the bill requires that the companies understand the point of origin of the product, making sure that they follow the supply chain down to the ground and where it came from. That's the essence of these policies. Because if you don't know, if you're company X and you're buying a bunch of palm oil, well, palm oil could be coming from a producer on the ground that is just wiping out the tropics and growing their palm oil, burning all the peat there and growing their palm oil, or it could be coming from a company that has grown their palm oil on farmland that has already been there, farmland that is rotated, farmland that is controlled by indigenous groups. So that is really the essence, knowing that the point of origin is coming from a sustainable place rather than an unsustainable place. So yes, even in, say, China.
That makes good sense, and now I'm really starting to understand it. Let's take a look at another video, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
El impacto la recibimos nosotros aquí en las comunidades, porque aquí es donde se viene a buscar los recursos. Esa presión que viven los pueblos indígenas pues es constante y quizás no se visualiza mucho, pero sí lo vivimos día a día, pues esa presión que se da.
Itu perusahaan ini adalah masuk di area peladangan masyarakat atau perkebunan ya di area di luar desa ini.
Ake kozwa la police sika po baya kokata banzete bayemboka to boy to telemi yango
si babandi kokanga bato kokima ba jeune garçon ko maltraiter bango na ndeye moko a désordre.
Keluarga saya diancam dengan sengkala panjang, anak-anak saya, anak-anak kecil itu diancam. Kenapa keluarga saya diancam?
Wow, so powerful. Jennifer, when we think of what's happening right now, sometimes it seems like, oh, it's just across the world, we're not impacted, but that couldn't be more false right now, where literally everybody in California is talking about how incredibly hot it is. Everybody's talking about how they're so worried about their homes and their apartments because of wildfires. I mean, this has come home to roost. So wouldn't it be logical for California to take the steps to start protecting our global forests so that the temperature doesn't keep rising? Because as you mentioned, trees absorb carbon. When we give planet Earth a buzz cut for industry, then what that does is it accelerates global warming.
That's right, Jane. And this really is an illustration of how California and the U.S. generally is inextricably linked with our forests. As we're seeing right now, temperatures are unprecedented, droughts are impacting farmers and people's ability to have access to water. And so climate change is very much a local issue. It is felt locally, and the impacts to our forests, even around the world, are felt locally. But at the same time, we're also inextricably linked because of our supply chains. We have a very intimate connection with these forests in what we consume in the state, what California is purchasing, what we have here at home. So products like the toilet paper you find in your homes, products like your shampoo, or the meat that you're purchasing. If you're not, if leaders like California are not ensuring that we're not driving the loss of these forests, we're going to continue to see worse and worse impacts. And it's incumbent upon the US as one of the major purchasers of these products to ensure that our forests are protected for future generations.
Yeah, and I'm not purchasing any meat. I also don't purchase paper towels. I gave them up. A friend of mine was over last night and she said, "Where are your paper towels?" I said, "I don't have any paper towels." Not to mention that saves me more than $1,000 every year. I use only recycled toilet paper. And I'm not saying I'm up here. Every decision is almost like a, what am I doing? Am I destroying the planet, or am I doing as little as possible? And I'm not perfect. I make mistakes all the time. It's very hard in a consumer society to make the correct decisions all the time. That's why, Judie Mancuso, this is important, because it makes the decisions for the consumer. In other words, it's a stopgap measure so that when we're looking at a product in the store, we know, oh, this palm oil didn't come. I also try not to buy palm oil, which can be very difficult because it comes in a whole variety of different names and it doesn't always say the word palm oil. But what I'm trying to say is it's very hard for consumers to make correct decisions because of a lack of information. This makes it a lot easier for consumers to do the right thing, Judie.
We did a statewide poll and we asked Californians, would you support legislation that would prohibit California from buying goods and services that come from, deforestation, from just plowing down these forests and taking away the potential for the air that we breathe and causing this climate crisis. And with no information to start, just asking people if they were on board with this, we got like 75% of Californians are all on board and are behind this. And that was every age group. That was Republicans, declined to state, Democrats, everybody was in it. And then when we gave them more information about how much destruction and, how easy this could be to just shift this buying power from these corporations causing the destruction to corporations that care and have good stewardship for the earth, we were in the 80 percentile. So Californians care about this across the board, and there's no transparency in the products that we buy. I mean, it is impossible to figure out where ingredients come from, whether the lentils I buy at Whole Foods, Ralph's, or Pavilions come from deforestation or from a place that is doing things right. So we need to take these steps, and there is no more time. When Al Gore's movie came out all those years ago, The Inconvenient Truth, I really thought this is a great first step. I was upset that he didn't include how much cattle ranching and animal ag caused the climate crisis, but at least somebody was coming out with something big and talking about it. And absolutely nothing's been done. And now we're at this place where things are happening so rapidly, and it was all in the movie. It was all predicted. There's been models of how the climate would change and how things would warm up there's been models, and the only way or the only fashion in which they've been wrong is that they didn't know exactly how fast it would happen.
Well, we're also in a wildlife extinction. The sixth mass extinction has begun. And when we get to a point where we have wiped out most of the wildlife vertebrates, which I think we've already wiped out most of them, but when we wipe out virtually all of them, that's going to trigger an ecological collapse. An IPCC investigator, reviewer said as much. We're going to start seeing really a collapse, and we're sort of in the early phases of that. I wanted to ask Jennifer about the indigenous piece of this, because I know the some of the graphics really talk about getting consent from indigenous people when it comes to what's happening on their lands. Can you talk a little bit about that, Jennifer?
Yeah, what this bill really recognizes is that sustainability and justice are inextricably linked. And too often, we're not just talking about the loss of forests, but also a failure to guarantee the rights, the internationally recognized rights of Indigenous peoples. So under the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, or UNDRIP as it's called, there's a provision that nearly every country in the world has signed on to, saying that Indigenous peoples need to have the right to free, prior, and informed consent to activities, industrial activities that are happening on their territories. That after centuries of colonialism, their rights to the land should be predominant, and they should be the ones to be able to decide and dictate the future of their territories and have their own self-determination. But too often that isn't being guaranteed in supply chains. And what this bill would do is not only ensure that we're not losing our climate critical forests, but also guaranteeing that California isn't sourcing from supply chains that are driving impacts to free, prior, and informed consent, and that are coming at the expense of how Indigenous peoples want to be using their land. And as we've seen from study after study, where Indigenous land rights are strongly protected, the climate is better protected, biodiversity is better protected. 80% of biodiversity in the world is found on Indigenous controlled lands. They are the best stewards of their territory, and after centuries of colonialism, it is long past time that they're allowed to determine their own futures.
Wow, very well said. Now, a lot of people, Nick, are afraid of calling. They feel they're going to bother their representatives. And nothing could be further from the truth, right? I mean, they want to hear from us. They want to hear what their constituents feel about this issue. And frankly, I personally think anybody from anywhere in the world can call, because this is a global issue. Climate change doesn't know state boundaries. And again, California is one of the biggest economies in the world.
That's right. First of all, if any of your listeners are from California, definitely call. All offices in California certainly want to hear from the people who are going to be voting for them first. But as you mentioned, people outside California, this is important to everyone in the United States that cares about the climate. So letting these legislators know is important. And that's their job. Their job is to listen to the public. So do not feel like you are bothering anyone. Their job is to listen to you, and they're there, and they'll answer your call, and they will write down your response. And it takes 1 minute, not long at all.
All right, so I never ask anybody to do something I'm not going to do myself. We're in a state where you need to get the consent of somebody else to broadcast them, but I am going to call. I'm calling I'm calling Jim Nielsen right now, and I'm going to say, please vote yes on the California deforestation.
AB 416.
Yes, I'm doing it right now, people. I'm calling right this second. The phone is ringing. Come on now.
Leave a message if you have to, Jane.
Oh. Call the district office.
Uh-oh.
I can get you that number.
Hold it. So they're asking somebody, constituent? They're telling emails. Okay. Yeah, they're giving us a bunch of emails. But I'll get through. Hello? Okay, so when we make these calls, we often find that because, first of all, the situation today where people are not in the Capitol, they're asking you to do other things. So what I would say is follow the prompts. Now, we also are going to call the other one, 916. Let's see if the other one works, because this is super important. We've got to make these calls and we've got to send the emails. So what you have to do is do a little detective work. And when this happens, you've got to continue on. We are not what I would say, timid. We are going to 916. I've got the second number right here.
651
4003. I do this all the time. I follow wherever the trail leads.
Well, the pandemic has definitely caused communications to be much slower with the Capitol.
916. We're going to get somebody if it's the last thing I do. But this is what we do. We, as people who are advocating for the planet. You can leave a message. You've got a voicemail on this one.
Yes, please.
That works. I think this is okay because it's a recording. It's a public recording. Yes, hi. My name is Jane Velez Mitchell. I live in Venice, California, and I am calling to urge the legislator to vote yes on AB 416, End Global Deforestation Act. We need this now. The clock is ticking. We are destroying our planet. California needs to lead the way. Yes on AB 416. And again, my name is Jane Velez Mitchell, and I live in Venice, California. Thank you so much. There you go. We got one down.
Yay, thank you.
And the other one, I'm going to follow those prompts. They did give a number. I'm going to call again. I'm going to get the number because this situation changes moment to moment. I want to thank everybody for coming on. Let's just get some final thoughts, starting with Nick.
Sure. We've gone over how important it is to touch base with your legislators. Keep letting them know. You know, once you make the call for AB 416, don't go silent. Keep engaged with them. Keep calling them, letting them know that this is important to you. Your voice will push them to do the right thing.
Yes, and Judie Mancuso, your final thought.
Well, that folks can come to our website and we will keep them updated. They can sign up for our newsletter, which is my email blast that I send to everyone, letting them know step by step what they need to do, whether it's calling these two gentlemen or the next hearing we get to, who to call then. So to sign up on our website, socialcompassioninlegislation.org, and I will keep them updated. And of course, we have a ways to go. This is one hearing, but then we have another, we have a floor vote, and then it goes to the governor. So we're going to need everybody every step of the way.
And let me just say, so some of the comments are, hey, we can also go to their Facebook pages. We can also tweet them. We can also use all sorts of social media. So you have the phone call, you have the emails, which they give you on the number, that you also have Twitter. You can tweet them, and I'm going to do that. I never ask anybody to do something I'm not going to do myself. And you can also go to their Facebook page. You see right here, Senator Jim Nielsen, his Facebook page. Go there and make yourself known. Let's pass this. This is such an important bill. When I think about the repercussions, it's unbelievable how powerful this bill can be. So we all want to say yes on AB 416. We're going to give Jennifer the final word today. Jennifer.
Great, thanks, Jane. One other thing I wanted to say is, too often this is sort of viewed as economics or companies versus the environment, but really what this bill highlights is the opportunity for that companies have to really step up as leaders on transformative change, on ensuring that we can have supply chains that are compatible with a climate safe future. And as investors are increasingly showing with votes on shareholder resolutions from this past year, and as investors with $1 trillion in assets have supported this bill, investors and the marketplace are increasingly calling for these kinds of safeguards in their supply chains. And California has the opportunity right now to not only broaden its climate leadership to include the forests that are absolutely vital to meeting our climate goals, but to also position suppliers within the state to be leaders on this front and to embrace this climate safe supply chain future.
And thank you so much. I'd just like to say, as I think about this, I realize this is a game changer. This is enormous. As you mentioned, California is what? The 5th largest economy in the world on its own? If it was its own country. Mm-hmm. And you can give a bunch of money and work hard to save this animal and that animal, and I certainly do that. And every time I turn on the TV, I see, well, save elephants, save this animal, save that animal. Of course. But when you're destroying the habitat of this wildlife at the rate of 40 football fields of forest every minute, that is the chief cause of habitat disruption and wildlife extinction. So if you care about animals as well, this is such an important bill for people, for animals, for the planet. Let's pass this California Deforestation-free Procurement Act. Say yes on AB 416. Keep calling, keep emailing, keep going on Facebook, keep tweeting till you get through. Thank you so much, incredible panel, for joining us today.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Bye.